don't have a PowerPoint because really it will be pointless, given that I have to present only a very simple argument, which I think is quite urgent to make. And it is, as Andrea said, why archaeology should be part of the curriculum in general education. And by general education, I refer to the secondary education, what in England they call the A level. So, my first part is identities and narratives. Who am I? Who are we? These fundamental questions, which define our identities and to a large extent determine our actions, can only be answered by narratives. Our personal stories are woven into more general, contextualizing histories of various depths. Our subjective social identities are set against the background of major events through which we retrace the various episodes of our own life and what we know about the lives of our parents and their parents. Further down the past, we identify with what we have learned in our early years about the historical events which contributed to the formation of the collective memory in which we participate. It is this collective memory that is the foundation of our cultural and ethnic identity. This is not questionable. Although we receive and process information about these historical events from a multitude of sources, family tradition, monuments, museums, public discourse, and even comics, the main authenticating power comes from the curriculum we assimilated during our formative years. National history is a compulsory part of this curriculum at its most basic level, at least since the beginning of the European nation states, which took shape in the 19th century with the rise of literacy and the emergence of history as a discipline. All the authors of history textbook must make a crucial decisions as to when and where to start the narrative. This is not a question that can be given a simple answer. History must provide depth and ground to collective identities, and for this, it must invoke a particular foundational gesture, which becomes ritualistically celebrated henceforth, national days, etc. Given the relative instability of geopolitical borders over time, there is a need to assimilate into the narrative various degrees of territorial plasticity towards the present geographical figure that is the iconic representation of each nation. The boundaries are not always obviously natural, but generally depend on arbitrary decisions reached through force or diplomacy. Therefore, identities are socially constructed through oppositions and divergence of interpretations. What is celebrated as a victory in a narrative is lamented as a defeat in another. Language and ethnic differences compound the conflicts of historical cultures, and naturally, we could object that history as a scientific discipline offers more balanced perspective. However, textbooks, by pedagogical necessity, mainly at a primary level, tend to simplify complex issues and implement national agendas. The histories promoted by the curricula feed social and international tensions and mutual distrust. It also provides politicians with combative arguments, as the recent and ongoing Brexit discourse amply demonstrates. Other recent electoral debates in Europe have shown how easily history can be used to arouse antagonistic emotions. By contrast, and that is important, by contrast, the position of archaeology in the curriculum is far from being secure. For instance, in the United Kingdom, archaeology was taught until recently in A levels as a part of the national curriculum history, with textbooks such as Discovering Archaeology, a Teacher Guide, and various pedagogical help. If I had put a PowerPoint, I would display now the covers of these books, but I mean, it's enough just to have one to give an example of what this type of thing is. Now, art history and archaeology, there is a big title of the Guardians, art history and archaeology scrapped from A-level curriculum. It's very simple. Art history, archaeology scrapped from the curriculum. And the Guardian continue, first art history, then classical civilization, and now archaeology, one by one, the A-level subject that introduce 6 formers to disciplines they may come across at home are being axed from the curriculum to make way for what the Department of Education considers more rigorous studies. These will narrow our sense of ourselves and what it means to be human. This is a very important statement. It's by a journalist of The Guardian. And this is basically the point I want to make in this brief paper, which is to offer 5 arguments. There could be, actually, I select the number first before finding the arguments, because I know that if I select 3, I will find 3. If I select 7, I will find 7. But let's say 5, and it's up to you to judge whether they are relevant or not. So, to offer 5 arguments in defense of archaeology as an essential component of general education, which should be taught in secondary school. Now, the following is not meant to be a curriculum, a project, but rather a set of considerations that could potentially inspire various courses of study adapted to local situations and environments, with a view to benefit the community in general. First of all, it would provide a temporal perspective that frames national histories in a broader context. And that is quite important, to be able to consume or to assimilate national histories, but within a much wider context. We can, discuss that. Secondly, it would develop a sense of human continuity and diversity. And that is also extremely important. Thirdly, it would sensitize to the importance of material culture in relation to the environment and cultural contacts. Because if you do archaeology, you become very much aware of all the contacts with other culture and so on, and how much your own identity is built on this diversity and influences and cooperation rather than antagonism. Fourth, it would debunk racist ideologies and provide a soft introduction to genetics, because you cannot really teach at this level prehistoric archaeology without bringing in a soft way, genetic consideration to show, the way human beings are made up of a great variety of DNA, etc. And finally, it would educate students to perceive and save the archaeological record in their own environment. And that is quite interesting. I mean, we have to think of the archaeology of the future. And I plan to propose for next year a session on the archaeology of the future. That is, if we ask ourselves now, what the archaeologists in the 22nd century will want to know about the way we live, then we could make sure that we prepare in advance, assuming that there has not been a planetary catastrophe, that the planet Earth still exists, that it has not boiled down to ashes or things, etc., etc., and that the language, there is still a way of communicating, or that the technology will have not made so much advances or modifications that it will be impossible to communicate with the past as we are now in relations to the Homo erectus, for instance. It's very difficult to imagine. Now, of course, Homo erectus could not figure out that hundreds of thousands later, there will be people interested in knowing, how they were cooking, how they were chanting, how they were loving, etc., etc. So it's interesting. It would be interesting to develop a movement in which we would think of, well, in the 22nd century, some people will ask how we lived, how we could manage with this and that. And we know that how often we found in the archaeological record objects that we have no idea what it is for. And for the people at the time, it was obvious they were taking that for granted. So there is certainly a sort of prospective thinking in thinking of the archaeology, not the archaeology of the future, but the archaeologists of the future, and try to cooperate with this virtual situation. Now, three objections can be opposed to the perspective of archaeology in the curriculum. How to handle the fuzzy transition between biological evolution and cultural evolution? That's something that in a curriculum in archaeology has to be solved. And people can say, well, it's difficult, we cannot do that. Secondly, how to handle the conflicts of theories and methods in archaeology? Because people will say, you want to teach archaeology? Well, which theory, which method? It is too confused, there is too many, so you cannot teach it. Well, maybe it is important to introduce young minds to the scientific inquiry in which you have indeed several theories, several hypotheses, and so on. And finally, how to conciliate archaeological knowledge and religious belief. And I suppose that it is one of the arguments for which some nations want to eliminate archaeology, because it is in conflict with some belief that is not complying with these methods. Okay. Of course, these are objections which I think can be answered and can be solved. In conclusion, being in Maastricht, and in view of the above considerations, it seems appropriate to advocate the defense of archaeology as an important part of the curriculum in general education for the benefit of the community. If it does not exist yet at the European level, and I am not inquired about that, it would make sense for the archaeologists of the EAA to tentatively design possible modules which would introduce students to archaeology following, for instance, 3 stages. And this is just, to put something on the table. 1, the material culture of the historical period they study, accompanied by a basic training in how to conduct field work locally. Secondly, introduction, and this will 3 levels, 1 year after 1 year. So second level, introduction to prehistoric archaeology with emphasis on the Neolithic and further ages. And thirdly, introduction to Paleolithic archaeology, including information on hunting and gathering culture, as well as basic knowledge regarding the input of genetics on the understanding of migrations and population dynamics. Such a module, or other combination of elementary archaeological knowledge, would offer a temporal perspective conducive to integrative rather than divisive education. Thank you.